Great. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining. Welcome to CI's Conservation International's People Need Nature discussion series. I'm so excited to be here. I'm so excited to have all of you. I see lots of old friends of CI and new friends of CI. So hopefully together we're going to have a great conversation about how COVID-19 impacts Amazonia. So thanks for taking the time and for joining us today. We really look forward to a good discussion. My name is Lisa Familari. I am the Vice President for the Americas Field Division at Conservation International. And in that position, I am leading our program for conservation of the Amazon, which is, I don't know, I feel like I'm the luckiest person alive. So I'm grateful every day for that work doing that. And it's super important work. And with all of your support, it's been really successful. In a few minutes, I'm going to introduce you to our featured speakers, and we've got this amazing lineup today. But before we do, I got to walk you through some of our housekeeping items because I want to make sure that we have a really good, well-run webinar. So upon joining, as you've all noticed, all attendees will be automatically muted, and your webcam is going to be turned off and will remain off for the duration of the event. So I just want to let you know that. We're going to have time for questions following our conversation, and we're really excited to dive into that. If you have a question that you want to ask, please enter it into that questions panel. I think you can see it in the upper right of your screen, or you should be able to, and you can drop down and go to webinar and type in a message. And we've got this incredible group of people behind the scenes who are organizing this event and who are going to be monitoring all of those questions, and we'll make sure that we raise them and talk about them during our Q&A session towards the end of the hour. So please go ahead and do that. If you also have any other challenges with audio, video, or anything you want to share, go ahead and text us and we'll get back to you. Also, if you want to expand or maximize the size of your video screen so you can see us all, big and clear in your living room, you can do that by clicking that expander in the upper right corner of your screen. And finally, we're going to record this session today and share it on Conservation International's website. And I'm going to send it right as this is done to my family and friends, and I hope that all of you do, because the Amazon is a really important place. We're really working hard to conserve it. There are some big challenges that are happening there. So we want to spread the word and sort of rally the world around conserving the Amazon and supporting Indigenous people. So to dive into our content, really right now in the Amazon, we have what we call a perfect storm. And it's a perfect storm in the sense, to me, it's like a hurricane or a giant tornado. It's not a good storm. COVID-19 is spreading. Indigenous people are dying. With that, their knowledge is dying. Fires are on a 20% increase or more in Brazil alone right now in the Amazon. The deforestation rate is up. There's weakening economies all over the region and all over the world that I think we're all experiencing. And that, in addition, is going to have a negative effect over the coming years. And especially in Brazil, there is this lack of law enforcement, which we're trying to address. And we have some great people on the ground in Brazil working directly on that. So it's a really tough place to be, but I have hope. I've been doing this since the 80s was my first trip to the Amazon. I've been working on it for 30 years, and at that moment we were in the same situation as we are now. And we managed to pull the world together to conserve over half of the Amazon basin with and for the Indigenous people and other people that live there. So I really am hopeful that we can do it despite the situation that we see ourselves in, if we can rally the world around this really important place right now. So with that, I want to introduce to you these amazing speakers that we have today. And the first one is Daniela Rake, who is one of the world's greatest conservationists. I am really lucky to have the opportunity to work with her at Conservation International. She is the Executive Vice President for our Field Programs Division at CI. And in that position, that means that she's responsible for leading all of our programs on conserving big forests like the Amazon, which is the size of the continental United States on its own, right? And all of our oceans and conservation work, and creating those sustainable development models which merge economic development and conservation together. And we at CI really believe that that's the way that we're going to be successful in conservation, and that we really can merge economic and human well-being together with nature conservation, and we can be successful globally in doing so. Danielle is also wicked smart. She has a PhD and a master's in natural resources from Cornell University and a bachelor's in biology from NYU. So their second speaker today is another really great friend of mine, a super conservationist, and that's Mauricio Bianco. He is from Brazil, and he's the vice president for our CI Brazil program, which is one of our biggest at CI. In that position, he leads our whole program on all conservation efforts and sustainable production of commodities there to try to deal with some of those impacts of deforestation. He's also responsible, obviously, for a big piece of the Amazon. So Brazil as a country owns 60% of the Amazon basin, and it's super important for CI and for our program. And Mauricio also leads our relationships and builds our relationships with Indigenous communities across the Amazon. So thanks, Mauricio, for joining us today. We're really excited to hear what you have to say about what's happening on the ground. Our third speaker today, I'm so honored that he is here, is Chief Tasca Yawanawa from Acre, Brazil. And I was really lucky to meet him last year during New York Climate Week in September, a year ago, September. So it's almost a year since I've seen him. And what he's done for his people in Acre has been amazing. And he's a real leader in Indigenous rights and maintaining Indigenous territories, and extraordinarily thoughtful. And so he really touched me personally, his story, and I'm happy to have him here. As chief of his people, he leads over 1,250 people, and they steward 400,000 acres of rainforest in the Amazon, on the Western Amazon of Brazil. He's the son of the former leader of the Yawanawa, and he grew up witnessing in his time the virtual enslavement of all of his people in the rubber industry at that time, and also losing their cultures when culture and spirituality when the missionaries came in the 1980s and 90s. So since that time, he has actively fought for the rights of his people and Indigenous people overall. And in a short amount of time, he and his community have doubled their territory, their Indigenous territory, and reinvigorated their culture and established economically and socially empowering relationships with the outside world. So he's really a role model and a leader. And I really am honored to have you, Chief Tasca. Thank you for joining. So without further ado, I'm going to pass this on to Daniela Rake, who is our conservation leader. Thanks, Daniela.
Thank you, Lisa. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. It's a real pleasure to have this opportunity to talk a little bit about what's happening in the Amazon, particularly at this moment of COVID. So I'd like to start out by maybe taking a step back and just talking a little bit about the Amazon forest in general. We often think of Brazil when we talk about the Amazon, but the entire basin actually includes portions of there's French Guiana, which is French overseas territory, Suriname, Guyana, Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, and Brazil, with, as Lisa said, Brazil having the lion's share of the Amazon. So, you know, the burden and the opportunity to conserve this area is really shared among all of those countries. And at Conservation International, we have programs with teams and offices in 7 of the 9 countries, so everywhere other than Venezuela and French Guiana. And those teams have been working on this for years, have deep connections to people at the local level in communities, but also in governments at the provincial or state level, as well as at the national level. And so I wanted to start out by just sharing this map with you. This is a map of the Amazon region that kind of illustrates our strategy for our work in the Amazon. So the green areas are areas that are already under some sort of protection or some sort of conservation regime. They are protected areas and indigenous lands. So the protected areas could be anything like national parks or community reserves, but they are areas that have been designated. They have management plans. There are rules for what can and cannot be done in those areas. And while they may not be fully resourced, or there may be challenges around, you know, the agency's capacity to really do everything that's needed, at least those areas have been designated, and there are rules that have been agreed to for how those forests, how those lands can be used. The green also includes indigenous territories. So the indigenous territories of the Amazon represent about a quarter of the total surface area. It is a huge area, and indigenous peoples are a major piece of the pie when it comes to making sure that we maintain the natural vegetation in the region. They have just not only huge expanses of land, but they have that tie to the land that you know, really has guided us in terms of long-term thinking and in terms of management and land use. So then let me move to the red area. The red area is area that's already been lost, meaning the forests have been cut down and that land has been converted to other things. So it could be agriculture, mainly agriculture, but also towns and cities and infrastructure. And then the yellow area is really in many ways sort of one of the most important and urgent areas of focus, because that is, the yellow is still natural vegetation. So it's mostly forest, but there are also naturally occurring savannas. But in the yellow areas, there are no real rules that have been agreed to for how that area can be used or what can and cannot be done. So without those rules in place, without protected areas or recognized indigenous territories with rights and access, what that means is that those are the areas that are most vulnerable to outsiders for land grabbing or other kinds of land use that would expand the deforestation. So this is the strategy that we use, as I said, to guide our work in the region. And, you know, while we have been working toward this and we have made a lot of headway over the last 3 decades or so that we've been at it with governments and with our partners, what we're facing now is really a whole new challenge. Already, many of the indigenous communities in the Amazon, of which there are, you know, approximately 375 different groups, already they were vulnerable. They lacked resources to monitor their forests, monitor the rate of deforestation, to prevent and fight fires. They lacked resources to effectively patrol, all of which, you know, is an effective deterrent for people who want to come in and clear the land. Now with COVID, all of that has been exacerbated. They have been hit incredibly hard by COVID because of their vulnerability in terms of exposure to this type of virus, but also lack of access to medical services and to healthcare services. These are, in many instances, remote areas, and even the medical services in the larger towns and cities have been overrun and are often unable to really serve the indigenous communities to the extent that they need to. So it's just an incredibly challenging time, and we're grateful for partnerships with people like Chief Tashka and the Yawanawa and others across the region. We not only stand in solidarity with them through this time, but have worked to provide other types of humanitarian assistance to help in this moment. So that's a little bit of the context. Now it's more important than ever to focus and support indigenous communities in the Amazon to help them weather the COVID storm so that we can continue to work together to improve quality of life and ensure that the territories that they own and have rights over will be managed in the way that they see fit in perpetuity. Thank you.
Thanks, Daniela. That's really great. Now I'd like to introduce Mauricio Bianco, Vice President for CI's Brazil program. Thanks, Mauricio. Mauricio, can you hear? We can't hear you. I can't hear him.
Oh, now I'm okay. Yeah, I was muted. Sorry. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Daniela. It's a pleasure being with you here and also with my friend Tasca Ioanawa. And I'm also thrilled to see all the folks here enjoying this webinar. Thanks a lot. So we heard from Daniela regarding the Amazon in the 9 countries that are part of it. But now let's do a deep dive on Brazil that houses 60% of the Amazonia, and it has 422 indigenous land where more than 208,000 indigenous live. So that clearly shows that traditional communities are the real guardians of the Amazon forest, and also for the services that are provided by the Amazon to the entire planet. For instance, the availability of water, air, and also climate stability, among others, right? So, well, we are seeing the Brazilian Amazon right now in all this very complex situation that we are calling, unfortunately, the perfect storm. And we're seeing deforestation is increasing. Fires have also increased, which is a direct consequence of deforestation. The flexibilization of the legal framework related to land tenure, indigenous rights, also in terms of lack of command and control, and now the pandemic, which is affecting indigenous people harder than the rest of the country due to their vulnerability. So let me walk through a little bit of all this so you guys can understand a little more on what I'm trying to say on that. In terms of deforestation, the first half of 2020, deforestation rates in the Amazon in Brazil increased by 25% compared with the first half of last year. So this data came from INPE, which is the National Institute for Space Research, which is the official data in Brazil. So we estimate that the official annual rate of deforestation, which is measured from August of one year to July of the following year, is going to be even higher than the one recorded in the previous year, which was already the highest in the past 11 years. So that estimate is backed up by the data from the past 11 months, from the 12 that we measure, that registered that already 64% of increasing in deforestation. And it's also important to remind that the current increase of deforestation rate, it signals a dangerous pathway of permanently transformation of the Amazon into a dry savanna. We may be closer than we think in terms of the tipping points in the Amazon, what would really accelerate the planet's climate crisis. So now on fires, the occurrence of fires in the Brazilian Amazon last month increased 28% when compared to July 2019, according to the satellite data also from INPE. So almost 6,800 incidences of fires were registered in the Amazon region in July 2020, compared with a bit more of 5,000 fires in the previous year. So that's another issue. And then the impact of COVID-19 on indigenous people. So according to COIAB, COIAB is the Coordination of Indigenous Organizations in the Brazilian Amazon. Until August 17, more than 20,000 cases were confirmed. Among these, 579 deaths were registered until past Monday. So among these losses, important leaders also passed away. And I'm talking about, for instance, Chief Aritana Waialapichi, also Paulinho Payacan from the Kayapo people, Tio Chicó from the Aiwanawa, Becuira, also from the Kayapo. So when these elder indigenous people died, they take with them a great amount of knowledge and the culture of those indigenous people that may get lost at all. So we are evidencing here a significant cultural erosion on all this it's happening right now. And also according to a COIAB research published on last June, the mortality rate from coronavirus among indigenous people is 150% higher than the national average. So clearly showing that a greater vulnerability of these people to the virus. So that's pretty much the current situation in the Amazon, which is very sad indeed. We are very worried about it. But at Conservation International, we understand how important is our work in normal circumstances. And now, in this current scenario, I believe it's even more important. And I want to share a little bit on how we are looking to tackle these threats. our efforts are being addressed mainly in two ways. One, which is more a structured approach with permanent impacts, and another one which is more emergency aid, in this case, very focusing on COVID. So among the first ones, the restructuring activities, what we're doing, it's basically forest restoration. So CI, also with partners, we are committed to restoring 74,000 acres of critical forests in the Brazilian Amazon by 2023. From these, 10,000 acres were already in the process of restoration, and our very ambitious goal is to restore 250,000 acres by 2025. Besides restoration, we also are putting our efforts in conservation. So conserve current protected areas and also indigenous land by strengthening indigenous people and also local communities in development sustainable production value chains that keep the forest stand. For example, the production of fruits, nuts, latex, which is rubber, oil, and even sustainable timber in protected areas. And also related to activities on handicraft and tourism in these areas. Besides conservation, we are also supporting indigenous people in their subsistence activities that they are already developing, and they are supporting by increasing the production and also helping to find markets for their products. So for instance, the production of manioc, the cassava, also fruits, also handicrafts and ethnotourism in their villages. So all this to prevent deforestation. So now regarding more on the emergency-based support, we are supporting indigenous people to confront COVID through a campaign called Amazon Forever, that we're gonna talk a little bit more on that, done by Tashka. So in this campaign, we are providing protection equipment, masks, also cleaning and hygiene material, and also we are supporting medical equipment to operate what the indigenous people call primary indigenous support units, which are a kind of mobile ICUs that serve for indigenous people that need it without the need of remove them to centers to have more health facilities that are often many hours away by boat. So also the campaign is financing logistics for transfer those indigenous people who need to be removed for more serious issues. And there is also a part of the resources that are being used for the acquisition of seeds and tools for farming and fishing for their activities, for the activities for indigenous people. So we're doing all this targeting 4 specific indigenous people: the Kayapó, the Ayanawa, the Ashaninka, and also the Yawarapiti. All of these 4 people from the Brazilian Amazon. And just to conclude what I have to share by now, we managed to help directly, to support directly more than 10,000 indigenous people they are being benefited only on the emergency aid support.
Thanks, Mauricio. Really appreciate it. Next on the list, I want to introduce to you again Chief Tashka Yawanawa, who's going to speak to us and give us an overview of what's happening on the ground from his community. We've had a few technical challenges, so I hope that it works. I can see you. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you guys. I don't know if you can hear me.
I can hear you perfectly.
Oh, that's
That's
great.
wonderful. So I will just
Wonderful. That's
hand the floor to you. It's such an honor to have you here. We're so excited and we'd love to hear everything you have to say. So thank you very much. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. My name is Tashka Yawanawa. I'm chief of the Yawanawa people. The Yawanawa people live in the Yawanawa territory, which is located in the state of Acre in the Brazilian Amazon rainforest in South America, of course. And we are about 1,250 people. The Yawanawa, from immemorial time, used to live in our traditional territory, and from immemorial time, we live in the same place, protect the forest, using the forest as our home, where we get the medicine, we get the food, we get the water, we get everything we needed. The Yawana was contact in the middle of 60s. The first contact was by the Brazilian Robert Tappers, and second contact was happened with the missionary from New Tribe Mission from Florida, from US. And for so many years, my people work as slave for the Brazilian Robert Tappers, and they were submit to be evangelized by the missionaries. In 1983, we expelled the whole Robert Tappers and the missionary, and we demarcate our territory in 3,000 hectares of the land. And after we expel the invaders, we invite the government to help us to demarcate. In 2003, the Yawanawa people saw that a lot of Shagged land was outside of officially Yawanawa territory, place like cemeteries, place to hunt and fish, and we reclaim to revive the Yawanawa territory. And we revised in 2005 with 200,000 hectares of the land. And now we are all there. Yeah, and the one things about the Yawanawa is about the union. We are the Yawanawa. We are Yawa means whiteboard. Nawa means people. We are people of the whiteboard, and we always follow the leaders. This is something Yawanawa maintain. We maintain united, and this year was really scary us with COVID happened. Just remember us on the 16th, in the 18th, when the Yawanawa was attacked by malaria, by other kind of disease we didn't know that a lot of our people die in the 80s. And once this pandemic of COVID came, we was scared. The whole community got at the same time. But we not isolated nobody. We all coming together. We use a lot of Yawanawa traditional medicine. We mixed it with the medicine. We did a lot of tea. And we confront the COVID. And today the situation is not so good, but we have under control. And we haven't lost. My uncle Chico lost. We lost him. He passed. And the indigenous people, it's like Yawanawa. Today we don't have any kind of program from the Brazilian federal government. We are just alone by ourselves to survive wherever we can. And thanks to the partners, we are surviving. Like we are so happy. I don't know if I can say that, but international concern was very important to us. In the middle of the pandemic thing, we buy a lot of help us buy a lot of materials and supply for the community. This really make us a difference. And today here in Amazon in Acre, we have a lot of other communities. It's past the situation like the Yawanawa live it. The most dangerous is about no contact in people. A week ago, one people that live in cross between Peru and Brazil, and they just was looking for a support, a very close community here in Acre, and that's really get us a worry. And also in happen another parts of the country. This really scary us because for kind of disease we know we use traditional medicine. We have our spiritual medicines, but this new thing we don't know how to do, how to deal with that because it's something very new. That's worry us. But at the same time, these pandemic things brought back a lot of families that was living in another place or in the city. They back to the land, and also people wake to see for so many years they live in the town, they back for their home. And the certain time we closed the community, and we found it that everything we needed was there. And that's make me have a hope that we still, for millennia, for immemorial time, people need to back what they really are. Because what we really we are connected to Mother Earth. When we disconnect, we get far, we get sick. When we back to the Mother Earth, the healing comes, not just for indigenous people, but can happen for the whole humanity, because we all come for the Mother Earth. When we talk about support to help, we're talking about for people that don't have any kind of assistance for any programs. Like in state of Acre, we have a government. They don't have any kind of support for indigenous people. We have this federal government. We don't have any kind of support. We don't have any politics for indigenous health program. We are alone. But thank you to you all, we can do a difference. It's no matter where you are. It's no matter where we are now. We are all connected. I hope you can participate in this campaign, Amazon Forever. You can make a difference. And thank you to all. Thank you for invite and give a voice to participate, because we don't have so much space to speak by ourselves. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chief Tashka. It's really, I can't even imagine what you're going through, and I'm so grateful that we have had this time with you and that we've heard about the situation in your community and in the Amazon overall. So we really appreciate it. And I'm so glad that the technology is working. I wanted to let everybody know that we do have a link to our Amazon Forever campaign that we've put in the drop-down menu. So if you're interested, that would be fantastic to support Chief Tashka and other Indigenous groups in the region. I also want to thank our whole panel, Daniela and Mauricio, for joining us today and talking about the Amazon. And I think now it's time to go on to some questions, and we've got a couple good ones. The first one that I've got here is for you, Chief Tashka. In recent months, illegal gold mining operations have been encroaching on Indigenous lands, cutting down forests, and potentially spreading COVID-19. How are Indigenous peoples responding to this threat, and how can people support, or all of us support, their efforts?
Yeah, this happened in the United States in Roraima with the Yanomami people. The Yanomami people living in the big territory, which include part of Venezuela and Brazil. And they always have a problem with the miners and loggings, try inviting to explore the resources they have. And also happen when these miners come to the land, they spray a lot of COVID into the communities, and I think the Supreme Court was trying to expel them to there, but unfortunately, this is very sorry. All this guy have a personal support from our President Bolsonaro. Bolsonaro like it create this kind of trouble, supporting loggings, miners to invade the territories. We don't have any like umbrella federal agencies like FUNAI was working before. FUNAI is totally aside of the miners and the loggers. We need to organize by ourselves. I think the Yanomami people are gonna. I think they are organized by yourself to confront this kind of situation. This kind of situation put all indigenous leaders in very dangerous place. But we don't have another option. It's not confronting to that.
So support for your communities and indigenous communities to monitor and manage and patrol their lands would be very important, I can imagine.
Exactly.
Thank you. Our next question is for Mauricio. It says, Mr. Bianco mentioned CI's great work on Amazon restoration. Is it feasible? And if so, how long does it take to restore rainforest that's been burned, clear cut, et cetera, for ranching purposes?
Yeah, I mean, feasible, it is. We're never going to lose hope on that. And we know it is feasible. It demands a lot of resources, time, and also willingness, not just from the organization like ours, but also with the government, with helping with the public policies, and also the private sector that most of the time can help us to finance this. But it's important to mention that in the case of the Amazon and mostly all the tropical forests, we count with what we call it natural regeneration, which is a kind of a technique in which if we can set aside a specific area of the forest, in general, the forest come out by its own. So that makes things, let's say, cheaper, and it reflects the forest as the same way that it was before, or the closest as possible as it was before. So that's important to mention, because in the case of the Amazon, the restoration techniques that we are using, which is several techniques, one of the most important is this one that we call it natural regeneration. But we also do what we call it muvuka, which is seedling. Now we pick up different kinds of seeds, and then we spread in some places, in some pastures, and then trees come in different moments, and they mimic what would be like a forest, a regular forest, right? So I think that kind of to tackle this challenge, I'd say that maybe 2 or 3 things are very important. One, it's the blend of techniques that have to be used. It depends on where we're going to restore in the Amazon. The other one has to do with a blend of partnerships. It's all a blend, right? So we have to do this not just by our own, but we have to connect with other organizations, local organizations, international organizations, governments, state level governments, and also the federal government. And the third one, I have to say, which is important, it's also a blend. It's a blend way you finance everything on that. So finance from public funding, multilateral funding, and also private money. So I think if we can tap on those 3 elements, we can be successful, and we believe we will from the goals that we have in our programs.
Thanks, Mauricio. I guess I'd like to highlight too and get your thoughts. And Daniela, as what I see, and Chief Tashkas, is one of the benefits of restoration and these other types of initiatives for non-timber forest products are creating that different type of bioeconomy or based on natural products, which is a bigger and bigger movement these days. Is there's a real opening for the sort of post-COVID recovery and job opportunities. So from the restoration standpoint, I see it as a huge potential to create jobs for people in the Amazon region and in other parts of the world. And I don't know if you want to have thoughts on that.
Yeah, Lisa, thanks for that. I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think looking toward economic recovery that is going to benefit people, in the rural areas quickly and in concrete ways, economically speaking, is really what we have to focus on. And, for several years now, people have raised this idea of an Amazon-wide label of origin.
Mm-hmm.
So that fruit, nuts, other forest products that are used from the Amazon to create whatever products they may be, juices, fashion, other sorts of beauty care products, that those products actually are recognized as being, or as originating from the Amazon, and that origination comes with certain value, and that value is reflected in the price. I think it's a complicated process to pursue, given that the Amazon basin does cover those 9 countries, but not impossible. I think something like that, where investments in restoration that includes the plants and trees that are generating those products, while also building up these businesses, providing the market, and really just bringing value to Amazonian products as unique to that place and for the world, I think would be a very interesting thing to pursue.
Yeah, I totally agree. Thank you for that.
I like to add on that specifically that I think that's pretty important what Daniela mentioned in terms of what the agroforestry that we call it, right? But also the value chain of the restoration itself, it also represents a very important source of job and income, from the collecting of seeds until the planting of the seedling, depending on the techniques, and then the maintenance of the first years of the restoration area. So all this kind of jobs, they represent a good potential for job generation and income generation.
Yeah, totally. There's a huge potential there that we've been working on, and so have a number of our partners. I think it's going to be bigger in the next year as the economies are in a more challenging situation. There's a question here. Oops, I just lost it.
I just want to say, Lisa, excuse me. I know that I've been in the Yawanawah territory last year, and I know that they plant a lot of fruits. So, I mean, for certain moments, I never saw so much fruits in the same place as I did when visiting some villages in Yawanawah. So I think that was pretty important, and they kind of have everything they need, as just Tashka mentioned, right?
Yeah, I've got a couple questions for Chief Tashka. Let's see. If you could tell us, Chief Tashka, what life looks like for the Yawanawah tribe right now, and what's changed over the past few months, and what's happening that people outside the region may not know about.
Okay. Well, right now, people, they just make a farm. They just have a lot of plantations, like Maurice say. The month of July and August is time to plant in farming. I just did I plant a lot of melon, rice, beans, banana, and yucca. I just made my farm in the community. People is really concentrating into that. The health, we don't have a lot of people with COVID anymore. There's some people, but now they have a control. They know what kind of tea they really give to them, how treated of people. And every year the Yawanawah people organize a week of the Yawanawah celebration of artistic and cultural expression we call Mariri Yawanawah. Actually, this year not going to happen because we don't want to receive a lot of people from outside. We just going to do internally in the community. For this usually happen for 5 days, but we just going to have 1 day and Yawarani community. It's summertime. It's summertime in the community is really happy. You know, people can go to the fish in the river, can swim and get the fish, can go to the lake. You can go hunting for 3 days in the jungle and sleep there and back. People get little by little they get their normal life, um, and that's important. Not seeking not affect anybody. Everybody is helpful and it's great. Also, that's COVID time bring all the Yawanawa back as a people, support each other. We don't isolate anybody,
Mm.
but we hold each other. And also, as I say, not just for the Yawanawa, but for many tribes in Akri, when all this pandemic happened in the city, all people back to the community, and they really feel connect with the nature, with the forest, and they see the value. Sometimes people lost that kind of connection, and a lot of people they just back to the community again. I saw this happen with a lot of people. People really appreciate more. They feel they land very grounded, secure to place as the ancestor used for immemorial time.
Thank you. That's just so inspiring. And maybe that is part of that positive side of a negative, is that maybe COVID-19 to me is also a great equalizer around the world, right? We're all in the same position. And it doesn't matter your wealth or, well, it does matter your health, but other things. So it's a time that we can all come together. And that's just really wonderful to know that your community has done that. There is another question here for you, and I think for the whole panel is, somebody is asking, what else can we do on this, can we on this call do to help support the Indigenous people and Chief Tashka? So I throw that out to, I guess, all of our panelists to answer. I don't know, Chief Tashka, if you want to answer first.
I think support this Amazon Forever campaign. You are not just going to support just the Yawanawa, but also you're going to support all the indigenous people who have the same need. As I told in the beginning of the talk, we all indigenous people, we don't have any kind of supporters for any kind of governments. And this kind of support, they really arrive in the community. This make, I think Mauricio, I think it's not Mauricio, I think the CI showed the picture. One of that picture was the Yawanawa delivering the material. I think it was the last picture. I got that picture. People was really happy, get this net fish, they get to hunting things and for canoe. They feel they are not alone. Sometimes I think people feel alone is really sad. They said, you know, we have some good people that believe and really want to support us. We continue as living forever with it. This kind of support, I say,
thank you.
It's no matter where you are. You can make a difference wherever you are. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Daniela, you want to take that one too?
Yeah, I mean, I just think that, you know, I think Chief Tashka really said it all. I mean, we, as we face this challenge, I think the level of collaboration needs to increase from all of the various sectors. We've been talking a little bit, you know, here about the communities and their role and the collaboration with CI. And in spite of the difficulties with the Brazilian government at the moment, of course, they still have a huge role to play. They cannot be ignored. And so maintaining that relationship, maintaining dialogue and discussion is essential. And the private sector, you know, companies also have a critical role to play as well. They are often driving how things occur in the Amazon, be they agriculture companies, tourism, you know, not necessarily right now, but tourism sector as a whole. So I guess I would just add to Chief Yawanawa's comments by really emphasizing that point about collaboration.
Thank you. Mauricio? You're on mute.
Yo, not hear you.
Sorry,
Can we
yeah,
hear
yes, now I do. Well, we always get this question, how can we help, right? This is a very frequent question that we received, and I'm glad that people is willing to help. And as Chief Tasca said, in a more emergency-based support, we have this Amazon Forever campaign with we can support with any kind of amount of money that will be added to other ones, and we can really deliver those emergency-based items. But if you want to go further and do more structured support, specifically to the Awanawa, we are working with them on two main things. One, it's building a traditional school for them, so they have beyond the regular school for the kids, they can have a traditional culture where they can share with all the young people in the 12 communities that are around the Gregorio River. So that's one of the big issue on the support to the Anawa. And the other one, it's regarding restoration on agroforestry. So with fruits and many other kinds of fruits and food that we are starting to do with them, and we will do for the next years. So those are more structured support that if you're willing to support, it will be very welcome too.
Great. Thank you, Mauricio. Yes, from my perspective, and after this will be our final question, and I'd like to wrap it up from here. But when I think about what we can do in addition to financial support, so much in collaboration is about communication and really creating that movement of people globally, from the people in the Amazon, like Chief Tasca as a leader, to all of us on this call, to all of our friends, and mobilizing the world around conserving the Amazon, because we know the Amazon is the largest tract of pristine tropical forest left on Earth. We know that it's more than 10% of the solution to global climate change. We know that it can be conserved because based on the 80s, we did it. Between the 80s and now, we've conserved half of the Amazon. We just need that last push to do the rest. So we can use everybody's support to push it. And now communications is so easy compared to what it used to be. I mean, everybody can communicate these issues. And if we all come together and we make it apparent to how important it is to our decision makers and policy makers and try to drive change globally, I also believe that that's a big piece of this puzzle. And I know that people on this call are also in very influential positions. And so a big part of this is also thinking together about who are the most important people to influence to get the correct support to Indigenous people on the ground for this emergency crisis that we're in, and to get the support to the Amazon and the governments and build economies and deal with COVID crisis now and in the future. We can use everybody's thoughts and brainstorms and connections in addition. So I really want to push on that. I also want to thank you all for joining, thank everybody on this call for joining us today, and thank our panelists for participating. And I know the Chief is far, far away, and I'm so happy to have you. I want to make another highlight to our Amazon Forever campaign that's in the drop-down menu if you're interested in supporting that and supporting Chief Tasca and Mauricio's vision for work on the ground. And I thank everybody. We're going to follow up, as I said in the beginning, with a link to this, and I hope you send it out on your social media or to all of your friends and family or to whoever you know, and try to build that global support for the Amazon and let people understand how important it is and what we can all do. And even a small amount can support a lot for communities like Tasca's in the Amazon. So it doesn't have to be a giant amount of financing or anything like that. I mean, everything goes a really long way. So please share this with your family and friends, and I hope you join us for our next one. So next week on the 26th, we've got Dr. Thomas Lovejoy, who's also one of the best Amazonian experts in the world, talking to us about how protecting nature can help us protect the global economy. So I hope you don't miss that one. I hope you have the time to join, and thanks so much. And we will take you to the Amazon. So honestly, I have not visited your community, Chief Tasca, but that's my dream. But I mean, all of us will take you wherever as soon as we can all get on a plane. So if you're interested, let us know, because that's the first place I'm going. So thank you.
Please, You're more than
Bye.
welcome to visit.
Thank you. Yes, I know. And you have a great
Right.
tourism enterprise there. So it'd be lovely to take a whole team there. So everyone on this call, we should all go together.
Great.
Plan.
Thank you. Bye bye, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.